Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. So today's going to be a Ukraine update. So I've spoke to various people out on the ground, from security managers at NGOs to NGO workers themselves to, just Ukrainian people who are out there on the ground. I've got a lot of different perspectives that I've had to digest today. But the reality of the situation on the ground, well, when I make all these, analyses, I always think, right, what is the core element to all of this? So forget the weapons, forget the money, forget anybody's political persuasion, forget when the elections are, forget all of that. The key question is, do we see Vladimir Putin and the Russians right now holding up their hands saying, yeah, guys, sorry, this was our fault. We'll leave you alone. Do we see that happening? No, of course not. Okay, so if we use that as the basis then for our analysis, what are the potential options? Well, there's two options. Either they get pushed back out of Ukraine, the Russians get pushed back out of Ukraine, or they push a sufficient distance into Ukraine and beyond to give themselves the real safety buffer that nobody can come and get them. So when we're talking about, there may be a peace deal on the cards, Putin wants this, they were provoked, the Ukrainians need to have a seat. Guys, none of it matters at the moment. We're still so far away from any peace talks even being put on the table, because remember, if we go back to the original concept, will the Russians put their hands up and say, hey guys, my bad? No, of course not. So they're the two options. Does it look like the Ukrainians can push the Russians out? Absolutely not at the moment. They don't have enough men, and that's the reality. Now, which brings me on to the first thing that's happening in Ukraine today, which was the first day of the new draft, the new mobilization, the new conscription laws put into place. Now, at the beginning of this conflict, there were people running to the front lines. They were running to get rifles. They were running to defend their countries. But as things have ground on, what we're now seeing is just the absolute weight of the Russian war machine. And when you look at these two war machines in comparison, Ukraine is literally reliant on I don't want to use the word handouts, but I can't think of another word. Donations, I guess. Same thing. So Ukraine is heavily dependent on gifts from other countries. If gifts and money stop flowing in, Ukraine will fall pretty soon because they don't have anything to throw at this fight. Whereas Russia, on the other hand, and again, I don't want to be one of these people who I'm giving you this as objective as I can, guys, okay? The Russian war machine has grown in strength. What do I mean by that? They've found ways now to mass produce the weapons that they need, mass produce the ammunition. It's not, we talk about weapons. Weapons are easy to get. It's the ammunition. It's the ammunition to fuel those weapons. It's the artillery shells, guys, all right? The reality is this is an artillery war, and it's, and it's heavily dependent on artillery shells. Russia has all the natural resources within Russia. Russia is huge, and people forget how big Russia is. They have all the resources, they have all the minerals and all the raw materials to create these artillery shells, and they can mass produce them. Whereas the weapons and the ammunition that's being given to Ukraine from the West, and I've said this so many times, they are a lot better, but they can't be produced as fast, and they're a lot more expensive. So there's the two, the two sides of this story. So initially in this conflict, there was men running there men and women as well, to defend their country. Now the Ukrainians I feel they're demoralized because it seems like it's a never-ending battle. The Russians can, I think I read something that the Russians can replace 1,000 battle tanks every month. I mean, if you're in Britain, I think we have 200 battle tanks on stock, and probably 50% of those actually work. So we've probably got 100 tanks, and I get the argument, about I get the argument on technology and no, but it's a better tank. Yes, it is a better tank, but they can produce 1,000 a month. So literally, they could be sending a thousand tanks to one of our tanks, and doesn't matter how good your technology is, it's not that far ahead yet. Anyway, so the Ukrainians are really looking at this now and thinking, guys, you know what are we actually hoping to achieve here at best case scenario? Because Putin's really, really pushing in and around Kharkiv at the moment. And it's only going to be a matter of time before he's secured that northern corridor above Kharkiv, and then he's going to push from the south. I can guarantee it, And then you'll see mainstream media commentators. What's the one on Sky News? He stands there and he just reads his notes. Yeah, he'll start talking about this. He'll be saying, "Oh yes, Putin looks like he's going for a pincer movement." Of course he is. They need to neutralize Kharkiv still so they can move on to the Dnipro. So that's the situation on the ground in Ukraine. That's the feeling at the moment, and that's why I feel that NATO troops are imminent any day, guys. All right. What that would do, I think you've got France and Lithuania, the main two donators of troops initially. But let's not be under any illusion. Once this precedent's met, once this bridge has been bridged of NATO troops in Ukraine, and you give it a couple of weeks, normalize it, then after that, all the rest of the NATO troops will just filter in because it's already happened. So what will happen when NATO troops move into Ukraine? First of all, none of the NATO troops initially are going to be doing any of the fighting. They're going to be relieving all the guys up to the Dnipro and on the northern corridor, and then maybe on the border with, I think, Transnistria. So basically, they'll be backfilling the rear security, and they'll also be doing training missions. Now, this is just me speculating what their training missions would be, but looking at the conflict the way it is, looking at the reality of the situation on the ground with the training of the Ukrainian soldiers and the draft, I think they would need to do task-specific training and mentoring. So, in the sense that they don't... the NATO troops wouldn't have enough time to do a training package to train, these soldiers for everything. So what I feel they would do is they would do task-specific training. So, right, guys, you 100, 200, 50, whatever, you guys come here. We're going to train you guys to go and assault this train station, to go and assault this bus station, whatever, it doesn't matter. They will train them for one specific mission. They will go out on that mission, and then they will come back, and then we'll train for the next mission. And I feel this will just be a rotating, this will just continually rotate through. That way you get, you don't have to train. You're a lot quicker with your timings. You can train, you can train people very quickly for one specific task because they don't need to know anything else. You're not teaching them map reading. You're not teaching them fieldcraft. You're not teaching that. You know what I mean? There's a big topic that you can teach people. But if they do task specific training, they're just not going to need that. It's going to be a lot quicker and it's going to be a lot more effective because they can punch forwards and they can do a lot more offensive operations. The downside of that is, and things inevitably do. The downside is when things inevitably go wrong and they deviate from that path, from that from that plan, then they will be very vulnerable at that point. But guys, the Ukrainians have to make the best of a bad deal, which is what they've got, and I think that's the best way forward. Because, like I said, they don't have time at the moment to train for everything. So they have to train for a specific mission. They have to conduct that mission, come back, train for the next. And then after a number of missions or whatever, you can say, right, you guys have got enough operational experience. You guys go and do, whatever. And you can do that pretty well, from the west side of the Dnipro. That obviously brings its own problems. Russia then will see these NATO troops as fair game, and which they will be. I'm not trying to say, anything's not what it is. You've got two countries who are literally at war with each other. So when people are saying, oh, the Ukrainians can't strike into Russia, yes, they can. They're in a war. And when people are saying, oh, the Russians shouldn't be doing this, you're like, well, they're in a war. You know, these are things that happen. You know, of course you should. You know, and it's disgusting. Some of the things that I've seen in Borodyanka, Irpin, and Bucha, absolutely disgusting. From what the Russians have been doing, and there's absolutely no excuse for it. What I'm talking about is tactics. You can't attack this place or that place. When it comes down to a human level, all effort should be made to preserve life. It doesn't matter who that is. There should be no unnecessary casualties in a warfare situation. Anyway, guys, so that's what's happening on the ground. Let me just go through my notes here quickly because I got some messages sent to me earlier. Yeah, Russians are pushing. Zelensky said Kharkiv was a diversion and they expect more attacks to come later this week. So this was yesterday he sent that. So yeah, so already the Ukrainian government are admitting, they're understanding that these attacks could be a diversion. I don't think they are a diversion. I think it was a probing attack. But they're accepting now that this is just the beginning. Like I said it was, guys, all right? It was all over mainstream media, and they put these... I don't know where they get these things from, these headlines, but they I can't remember what it was like. Putin, humiliated, has to retreat from Kharkiv. I'm thinking, he's definitely not. I mean, he's took 9 villages and he's just not pushed any further. And now this morning he's took another 4 villages. So, all those mainstream media commentators who are getting told what to say... I wonder if they feel silly when they write these articles and then the next day what they say just happened. What they say happened just gets proven that that's not happened. So anyway, yeah. So they're all talking about it in Ukraine. They're all talking about, that there's some people now talking about this defensive line back in the Dnipro. I've said from day one, as soon as this push forward happened from the north of Ukraine, north of Kharkiv, I said very, very early on, I said, right, you know what, this looks like it's critical. I would consider getting all my troops, all my hardware out, cutting my losses and getting everybody back behind the Dnipro where we can form, a real defensive line. Because there just isn't anywhere that they can form a defensive line. And I get the argument that, we've been building defences here, we've been building defences there. The country is that vast, it's that big and it's that open, the country. You can just go around these defences. And if you can go around it somewhere, why wouldn't you? Why would you attack the defences? You wouldn't. You'd go around it and come, and attack them from the rear. Guys, sorry, that's the old paratrooper image for thinking of a joke. Anyway, so that's why, that's why these defences won't last, the depth defences that they've got. And as soon as the Russians have isolated Kharkiv, they're going to roll into it. They could roll up to the Dnipro. And that's why I've been saying all along, get all the people back, get them behind the Dnipro where they can, where, first of all, they're not going to lose as many people. They're not going to have lost as much equipment if they can do it now under their own steam at best pace. Otherwise, all this equipment's just going to be lost, and you do need the equipment. You need the men more than you need the equipment, but you still need the equipment. So let me just get a few of these headlines here, guys. Yeah, Sergei Shoigu as well. So throughout history, I don't think the Russians, you can go all the way back, and I don't know why it is, but they've never been very good at starting wars, but they've been really good at finishing them because they just keep going, and it's very difficult to stop that. Now, they've fired Sergei Shoigu, or I don't know, horizontal promotion or whatever sideways promotion, whatever you want to call it. Now, Sergei Shoigu was a Russian defense minister. He was probably one of the most corrupt people you will ever meet. Now, he's made a lot of money out of this. He's one of Putin's oldest friends. But now they've got rid of him. Now, if they put someone in his place, I think if they put anyone in his place, even somebody, probably my nephew who's 14 and doesn't speak Russian, and he's not even got any GCSEs yet because he's 14. I think he would do better than Sergei Shoigu. So already you can see them restructuring, reforming, and really pushing down to make this conflict, to win this conflict. Again, let's go back to my initial opening line. Do you see the Russians saying, "Hey guys, sorry, my bad, we're going to back out of this one"? No, absolutely not. So everything else, you need to make your decisions from that. So Sergei Shoigu is gone now. The guy they've replaced him with, he's more of a bureaucrat than a tactician. You can argue for and against that. Only time will tell. I don't really know that much about him, but it shows that they're moving things, they're shaking people, and they're shaking things around, and they're wanting to move forwards, and they're going to develop these things. Obviously, Putin is in China at the moment. He's having talks with Xi Jinping, and who knows what they're going to come up with. But if you look through these large conflicts, there's always a visit to another country, then they'll come back, and then there's another big thing happen. There's this minister, or Boris Johnson, for example, goes out to Ukraine, and then all this sort of stuff happens. So it's going to be really interesting when Putin goes back to Russia. What's going to be the next move? Because there's no illusion, China's holding the purse strings here. Russia's economy, it's. I think the sanctions that were put on Russia by the West actually helped. Because now they've got this dark oil fleet that's moving their oil around anywhere they want it, and they're not paying the normal premiums that other producers would. So all this sort of stuff just ties into the rise of the BRICS nations. What else have we got, guys? What else have we got with mobilizations? The latest in Russia. Yeah, and it's just more about these villages around Kharkiv, guys. All right, these villages around Kharkiv, they're getting pushed hard. The Ukrainians, they've pushed all their manpower into the villages now by Ukraine. They don't have any reserves until they get the mobilized troops up and running. So right now for Putin, right now for the Russians, they know they've got a critical time to push hard and to make that ground, to take as much ground as possible. I think it's only a matter of days now before before this whole thing, before Kharkiv's surrounded basically, and we understand what's happening. But guys, that is it. It's for, what day is it? Saturday night. We're having a family barbecue tomorrow. Sunday we'll be putting some videos on our other platform. And guys, that's it. Take it easy. Have a good night's sleep, and I'll see you tomorrow.